I gave away my dinner to a stranger and accidentally made the most dangerous man in Philadelphia remember my name. It was raining so hard that night the windows of Maple and Third Market looked like they were melting. Water ran down the glass in crooked silver lines, blurring the traffic lights outside until red and green became soft stains on the pavement. The old heater above the door clicked like it was thinking about dying, and the fluorescent lights buzzed over aisle 3 with the tired sound of something that had been working too long for too little. I knew the feeling. My name tag said Lily, though most customers never looked at it long enough to care. Lily Harper, 24 years old, cashier, stock clerk, janitor when the mop bucket overflowed, and guardian of a 16-year-old brother who still believed I had everything under control because I smiled before I came through our apartment door. I had been standing behind the counter for 9 hours, counting the minutes until closing, counting the dollars in the register, counting the ways I could stretch $12.40 until Friday. In the small fridge under the counter, wrapped in a brown paper bag, was my dinner. A discounted turkey sandwich, a cup of chicken noodle soup, and an apple with a bruise shaped like a thumbprint. It was not much, but it was mine, and that made it feel almost luxurious. My stomach had been growling since 7. By 10:30 I had started bargaining with myself. 10 more minutes, then soup. 5 more customers, then sandwich. 1 more wet umbrella dripping on the floor, then apple. That was when the bell over the door gave a weak little sound and Mr. Ellis stepped inside. I had seen him before near the bus stop, an older man with a gray beard, a brown coat too thin for December, and eyes that apologized before his mouth did. Rain clung to his shoulders. His hands trembled as he placed a small bottle of cough medicine and a cup of instant soup on the counter. He counted change slowly, nickel by nickel, quarter by quarter, lips moving without sound. I already knew before he looked up. People always looked up the same way when the money was not enough. Ashamed, as if needing help was a crime they had been caught committing. "I am short," he whispered. $3.18. From the office door, Caleb Rhodes sighed loudly enough for both of us to hear. Caleb owned the store, the apartment above it, and most of the fear I carried home at night. "Then put something back," he said. Mr. Ellis reached for the soup first. Not the medicine. The soup. That was what broke something in me. Hunger recognizes hunger, even when it wears a different coat. I opened the little fridge under the counter and took out my brown paper bag. Caleb said my name like a warning. I ignored him. I rang up the medicine, the soup, and my own sandwich. Then I pushed the bag across the counter. "Take it," I said. Mr. Ellis shook his head. "Miss, I cannot." "You can." My voice was steadier than my hands. "The soup is warmer than pride." His eyes filled, but he did not cry. Some people are too tired even for that. He took the bag like it was made of glass and walked back into the rain, holding dinner and medicine against his chest. I watched until his shadow disappeared past the bus stop. Only then did I see the black SUV across the street. Its windows were dark, its engine running, its headlights off. Behind the rain-streaked glass, a man sat perfectly still, watching the store like he had just witnessed something he could not explain. I could not see his face clearly, only the outline of a black coat, broad shoulders, and one pale hand resting near the window. I should have looked away. Instead, I stood there with an empty stomach, wet light on my hands, and the strange feeling that kindness had just called something dangerous out of the dark. The black SUV stayed across the street until Mr. Ellis disappeared into the rain, and somehow that made the store feel colder. I told myself it was nothing. Rich men parked wherever they wanted in Philadelphia. Dark windows did not mean danger. A quiet engine did not mean someone was watching me. But my body did not believe me. My hands felt too aware of themselves as I wiped the counter, straightened the gum display, and pretended my stomach was not folding in on itself with hunger. Caleb came out of the office with his phone in one hand and irritation written across his face like a receipt no one wanted. "You planning to pay for charity with my register next?" he asked. I kept my eyes on the counter. "I paid for it." "With what money, Lily? You can barely pay me what you owe." The words landed exactly where he aimed them. My rent. The apartment above the laundromat. The late fee he had mentioned 3 times that week. The hours he kept adding to my schedule because he knew I could not afford to refuse. "It was $3.18, I said. Caleb leaned closer. lowering his voice even though no one else was inside. People like him come back when you feed them. Then they bring friends. Then customers complain. Then I lose money. You want to be kind, do it on your own time. I wanted to tell him kindness was the only thing I still owned that he had not figured out how to tax. Instead, I swallowed the sentence because pride did not cover rent, and my brother Noah needed new sneakers before the snow came. The bell over the door rang again before Caleb could continue. He straightened immediately, the way small men do when they sense someone larger has entered the room. Rain swept in first, cold and sharp. Then the man from the SUV stepped inside. Up close, he looked even more unreal against the cheap brightness of Maple and Third Market. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with pale skin, dark hair combed back neatly, and a black wool coat that fell over a perfectly tailored suit. He did not hurry. He did not look around like a customer searching for chips or coffee. He looked once at Caleb, once at me, then at the empty place on the counter where Mr. Ellis had counted his change. Caleb found his customer voice. "Evening, sir. What can I get you?" The man walked to the coffee station and filled a small paper cup with black coffee. "No sugar. No cream." He brought it to the counter and set down a $20 bill. His eyes were dark but not flat. They were too observant, too still, like he had trained himself to hear what people did not say. "Keep the change," he said. His voice was low, calm, touched with something Italian-American that softened nothing. Caleb smiled too quickly. "Appreciate it." The man did not look at him. He looked at me. "What is your name?" My fingers tightened around the edge of the register. "It is on the tag." "I know." His gaze dipped briefly to the plastic name tag pinned to my green work vest. "I wanted to hear you say it." Caleb shifted beside me. "She is Lily. Good worker most nights." The man's eyes did not move from mine. "I did not ask you." The store went silent except for the refrigerator hum and rain tapping the glass. I should have been frightened by the correction. Maybe I was. But there was something almost satisfying in watching Caleb Rhodes become quiet for once. "Lily Harper," I said. The man nodded, as if placing my name somewhere important. "Vincent Moretti." I knew that name. Not personally. Not from introductions. From whispers. From customers who lowered their voices when black cars rolled down 3rd Street. From a newspaper headline folded under Caleb's desk about restaurants, unions, construction, and men who own things without signing their names. My mouth went dry. "Your coffee is getting cold, Mr. Moretti." Something almost like amusement touched his face and vanished. I did not come for the coffee. My heartbeat became loud. Caleb's did too, I think. Vincent picked up the cup but still did not drink it. "The man you helped. Do you know him?" "He comes by sometimes. And he pays. When he can. And when he cannot?" I looked at Caleb, then back at Vincent. Then the world usually reminds him. Vincent held my gaze for a long second. But not tonight. I did not know what to say to that. He glanced toward the door where rain turned the sidewalk silver. "Why did you help him?" The question was simple. Too simple. It moved past money, past hunger, past Caleb, straight into the part of me that was tired of explaining why people still mattered when they had nothing to offer. I wiped my hands on my apron even though they were clean. "Because one day," I said, "I might need someone to remember I am human too." Vincent went completely still. Not shocked. Not soft. Still as if something inside him had stopped walking away. Then he placed the untouched coffee on the counter between us and said quietly, "That is a dangerous thing to say to a man who forgot how." I did not know what frightened me more, that Vincent Moretti had said he forgot how to be human, or that he sounded like he meant it. The coffee sat between us, untouched and cooling under the fluorescent lights, a small black circle in a paper cup that somehow felt like the center of the room. Caleb stood beside the office door with his mouth half open, trying to decide whether he was still the most powerful man inside Maple and Third Market. He was not. Everyone knew it. Even the buzzing lights seemed to know it. I reached for the cup because work gave my hands something to do, but Vincent's fingers closed around it first. Not fast. Not threatening. Just enough to remind me he missed nothing. "Leave it," he said. "Why?" My voice came out thinner than I wanted. "Because I want to remember what I came here for." That made no sense, and somehow it made too much. He looked at the coffee like it had offended him by existing. Then he looked at me. You gave away your dinner. I lifted my chin. You were watching. Yes. That is strange. Yes. The honesty caught me off guard. Most men defended themselves before they admitted anything. Vincent Moretti did not defend. He stated facts like he had already survived the consequences. Caleb cleared his throat. Mr. Moretti, Lily is generous, sure, but she has a shift to finish, and I have inventory to close. Vincent turned his head slightly. Then close it. Caleb blinked. Excuse me. Inventory. Vincent's voice remained calm. Close it somewhere else. For one impossible second I thought Caleb would argue. Then he looked at Vincent's face and decided paperwork in the office had suddenly become very important. The door clicked shut behind him, but I could still feel him listening. Men like Caleb listen best when they thought they were hidden. I grabbed the mop leaning against the soda cooler and pushed it across the wet patch near the entrance. You should go, I said. You have already made my boss nervous, and when people make him nervous, he usually makes my life harder. Does he? I kept mopping. That was not an invitation to ask questions. I rarely need invitations. That is probably one of your problems. For a moment the corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. Not warm. Not safe. But human enough to make me wish I had not noticed. He walked slowly along the front aisle, passing lottery tickets, cheap umbrellas, cough drops, and the little plastic basket where customers left pennies they never took when they needed one. His coat did not belong there. His shoes did not belong on that cracked linoleum. He looked like a man from a different city standing inside mine, trying to understand why a girl with an empty stomach had made him stop his car in the rain. What did you mean, he asked, when you said the world reminds him? I should have lied. I should have said nothing. But hunger had made me honest, and exhaustion had made me careless. People look through him, I said. Like being poor makes him part of the weather. They step around him, complain about him, tell him to move along. Nobody wonders who he was before the coat got thin. Vincent stood near the window now, rain silvering the dark glass behind him. And you wonder? I tried to. Why? I leaned on the mop handle and felt how tired I was all at once. Because my mother used to say every person has a before. Before the bad job. Before the overdue rent. Before the thing that made everyone stop using their name. His gaze sharpened at that. And what is your before, Lily Harper? The question touched something I had not given him permission to see. Our apartment above the laundromat. Noah sleeping with textbooks open on his chest. My mother's hospital bracelet folded in a shoebox. Caleb's ledger with my rent circled in red. I looked away first. None of your business. Good, he said. You still know where the door is. I frowned. What does that mean? It means men who ask too many questions should be kept outside until they earn the right to hear answers. That was not what I expected from him. I had expected arrogance. Possession. The kind of power that reaches first and apologizes never. Instead he stood there with his untouched coffee and spoke like a man who knew exactly how dangerous curiosity could become. The clock above the cigarette display ticked toward 11. Closing time. The rain had softened to a mist, and the street outside looked empty except for the black SUV waiting at the curb. Vincent reached into his coat and placed something beside the register. Not money. A business card, black with silver letters and a phone number written on the back by hand. If Caleb makes your life harder, he said, call. I almost laughed. And what would you do? His eyes held mine. Listen first. The answer was so quiet it unsettled me more than any promise would have. He turned toward the door, but before he stepped into the rain, he looked back at the brown paper bag that was no longer under my counter, then at me. Mercy is expensive when you have nothing, he said. Do not let anyone convince you it was cheap. The bell rang as he left. I watched him cross the sidewalk and disappear into the black SUV. Only after the engine pulled away did I realize Caleb's office door was open again, and my boss was staring at the business card like it had landed on the counter with my future written all over it. Caleb did not touch the business card at first. He stared at it from the office doorway like it was something alive, Something small enough to fit beside the register and large enough to ruin the room. I could hear the rain outside, the refrigerator hum, the slow drip from the umbrella stand near the entrance. Ordinary sounds. Safe sounds. But nothing felt ordinary after Vincent Moretti left his name on my counter. What did he want? Caleb asked. His voice was careful now. That scared me more than his irritation. Coffee, I said. Caleb looked at the untouched cup. Do not get smart with me. I picked up the mop again, though the floor was already clean. He asked about Mr. Ellis. Why? Maybe because you were rude to him. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Caleb's face tightened, and the old version of him returned, the one who remembered exactly how much rent I owed and how badly I needed the job. He walked behind the counter, picked up Vincent's card between two fingers and read the name. The color drained slowly from his cheeks. Not enough for pity, just enough for proof. You know who this is? He asked. I know enough. Then you know not to bring his attention here. I almost laughed because that was the thing about men like Caleb. They believed attention was something women caused by existing incorrectly. I did not bring him anywhere. Caleb placed the card back down, perfectly straight, as if neatness could erase fear. You finish closing. And tomorrow you come in at noon. I looked up. I am scheduled at 4. Now you are scheduled at noon. I have to pick Noah up after school. Your brother can wait. There it was. The punishment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just 4 extra hours dropped on my shoulders because a powerful man had made my boss feel small. That is unpaid overtime, I said before I could stop myself. Caleb's eyes sharpened. It is called being grateful for employment. My stomach twisted. I thought of Noah's sneakers by the apartment door, Saul's peeling at the edges. I thought of the electric bill folded inside the cereal box because I could not stand seeing it on the table. I thought of my mother, who used to count cash in envelopes and still somehow make Sunday breakfast feel like a celebration. She had been gone 2 years, and I still expected her voice to come from the kitchen when life got too hard. Lily, breathe first. Panic second. So I breathed. Then I nodded because sometimes survival looks too much like surrender from the outside. After closing, I locked the front door, emptied the trash, and walked 6 blocks home through a rain that had turned thin and cold. The city smelled like wet concrete, bus exhaust, and bread from the bakery that would open before sunrise. Our apartment sat above a laundromat with a blue sign that flickered even when the machines were off. The stairs creaked under my shoes. At the top I paused, fixed my face into something softer, and opened the door. Noah was asleep on the couch with an algebra book open across his chest, one socked foot hanging over the edge, dark blonde hair falling into his eyes. He looked younger when he slept. 16, but still my little brother. Still the kid who used to hide behind me during thunderstorms and ask if Mom could hear the rain in heaven. I took the book from his chest and covered him with the faded quilt. On the coffee table, he had left me half a grilled cheese wrapped in foil and a note written in blue pen. Saved you some. Do not pretend you already ate. I sat down on the floor beside the couch and pressed the heel of my hand against my mouth. That almost broke me. Not Caleb. Not the rent. Not hunger. Kindness from someone who had even less room to give it. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. For one wild second I thought it might be Vincent. It was Caleb. Noon tomorrow. Do not be late. Under his message was a photo of the rent ledger from his office, my balance circled in red. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. Then I opened my wallet and found Vincent's black card tucked behind my bus pass. I did not remember taking it. Maybe I had picked it up while closing. Maybe some part of me had known pride would not keep Noah warm. I turned it over. One handwritten line waited on the back. If mercy becomes expensive, send me the bill. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I sat in the dark beside my sleeping brother, hungry and ashamed and more afraid of hope than I had ever been of fear. The next morning arrived without mercy. Gray light slipped through the thin curtains above the laundromat, turning our apartment into a place made of bills, chipped mugs, and things I kept promising to fix after payday. Noah was already in the kitchen when I woke, standing in socks beside the stove, trying to scramble eggs that were mostly sticking to the pan. He looked up too quickly, like he had been caught doing something wrong instead of trying to make breakfast. You got home late, he said. I rubbed my eyes and forced a smile. Closing took longer. He glanced at my face, and I saw the question he was kind enough not to ask. Noah had our mother's way of noticing pain and pretending not to corner it. "There is toast," he said. "A little burned. My favorite kind." He smiled. But it did not last. His sneakers sat by the door with one sole peeling open like a mouth. I looked away before guilt could make a meal of me. By 11:30 I was back at Maple and Third Market wearing the same green vest, the same name tag, the same face I used when I needed the world to believe I was stronger than math. Caleb was already in the office, speaking low on the phone. When he saw me, he covered the receiver and pointed toward the stockroom. "Shipment came early." "Start there." "No hello." "No thank you for coming in 4 hours early." Just another box added to the pile of things I was supposed to carry quietly. I spent the first hour breaking down cardboard, stocking canned soup, and pretending my stomach was not still angry about dinner. Around 1, the bell over the door rang, and I heard a familiar cough. Mr. Ellis stood near the entrance, cleaner than he had been the night before, his gray beard combed, his old brown coat still thin but buttoned straight. In his hands, he held the empty soup cup from last night, washed and flattened like proof. "Miss Lily," he said softly, "I wanted to return this." My throat tightened. "You did not have to." "I know. That is why I did." He placed it gently near the trash, then looked at the office door. Fear passed over his face so fast most people would have missed it. I did not. "Are you all right?" I asked. He nodded too quickly. "Fine. Fine." Caleb stepped out before I could say more. His expression changed when he saw Mr. Ellis, not surprise exactly, but recognition sharpened into annoyance. "You again," Caleb said. Mr. Ellis lowered his eyes. My hands curled at my sides. "He is not bothering anyone." Caleb smiled at me. "Lily's stockroom." Mr. Ellis took one step backward. Then the front door opened again, and Vincent Moretti entered as if he had timed the room to breathe differently. He wore a black coat over a dark suit, rain shining on his shoulders, his face calm enough to make everyone else look unprepared. His eyes moved first to me, then to Mr. Ellis. Something changed there. Not much, just a flicker, a memory finding its shape. "Thomas Ellis," Vincent said. Mr. Ellis went very still. Looked between them, suddenly aware that the air had grown too quiet. "I wondered if that was you," Vincent continued. His voice had lost its hard edge. "My mother used to say you were the only driver in Philadelphia who could make her laugh before sunrise." Mr. Ellis's mouth parted. For a moment the years seemed to fall off him and leave only grief behind. "Mrs. Moretti," he whispered. "She was kind to me." Vincent's eyes softened just barely. "She trusted you." Caleb's face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. I turned toward him, and the truth began arranging itself in my mind. Mr. Ellis was not just a hungry man from the bus stop. Vincent was not just a dangerous man who had watched me through rain. There was a thread here, old and hidden, tied around all of us. Mr. Ellis looked at Caleb, then down at his hands. "I lost my savings after I signed papers I did not understand," he said quietly. "A recovery company. A rental agreement. Fees I could never catch up to." Caleb snapped. "That is enough." Vincent did not raise his voice. "No. It is finally beginning." My pulse pounded in my ears. I saw Mr. Ellis trembling. I saw Caleb sweating under the cheap lights. I saw Vincent standing in the middle of my small, ugly store like the past had followed him in and placed a receipt on the counter. He looked at me then, and I understood why he had come back. I had thought I saved a stranger. But somehow, without knowing it, I had saved the one man who could expose the same cruelty that was slowly swallowing me too. Vincent did not ask Mr. Ellis to speak in front of Caleb after that. He did something more unsettling. He listened. In a city where most people treated poor men like background noise, Vincent Moretti gave Thomas Ellis his full attention, and the store seemed to shrink around the dignity of it. Mr. Ellis stood near the counter with his washed soup cup in both hands, rainwater dripping from the hem of his coat onto the linoleum. His voice trembled when he explained the forms he had signed 2 years ago, the late fees he never understood, the room he lost, the phone calls that kept coming even after there was nothing. Left to take. Caleb kept interrupting at first. This is not relevant. He is confused. There are legal processes. Each phrase sounded smaller than the one before it. Vincent only looked at him once. Let him finish. Caleb went quiet. I had never seen silence placed on him like that. Not forced. Not loud. Just undeniable. Mr. Ellis finished with his eyes on the floor. I was not always this, he whispered. I know, Vincent said. Those two words changed the air. I did not understand until later that Vincent had already begun asking questions the night before. By the time he returned to Maple and Third Market, he knew more about Caleb Rhodes than Caleb thought anyone could know. He knew about the payroll records that never matched the hours we worked. He knew about the apartment leases tied to employment favors. He knew about the recovery company registered under Caleb's cousin's name. He knew about former employees who had left without final pay because fighting would have cost more than losing. He knew because men like Vincent understood paper trails the way other men understood roads. Caleb tried to smile. Mr. Moretti, perhaps we can discuss this privately. No, Vincent said. You have done enough in private. My breath caught. I expected something dramatic then. Because fear teaches you to expect drama from powerful men. Raised voices. Broken things. Someone cornered. But Vincent reached into his coat and removed a folder. That was all. A folder. Black, thin, ordinary, and somehow heavier than any threat. He laid it on the counter beside the lottery tickets in the penny basket. Security footage from last night, he said. Payroll copies from 3 former employees. Public filings for Rhodes Recovery Services. Lease adjustments with matching penalty dates. A list of people your company pressured after they could no longer pay. Caleb stared at the folder like it had grown teeth. That is confidential information. Some of it is public, Vincent said. Some of it was given freely. Some of it will be reviewed by people who enjoy asking questions with subpoenas. I gripped the edge of the counter. The word sounded strange in our little store. Surrounded by gum, cigarettes, and instant noodles. Subpoenas. A legal word. A clean word. A word with shoes polished enough to walk into rooms where people like me were usually not invited. Vincent turned slightly toward me. Lily, how many hours did you work last week? Caleb snapped. She does not have to answer that. I looked at my boss, then at the folder, then at Mr. Ellis, who stood straighter now, as if someone had returned an inch of height to him. My voice shook, but it worked. 52. Vincent nodded. How many were paid? My cheeks burned. Shame arrived even though it did not belong to me. 39. The folder opened under Vincent's hand. He did not touch me. He did not tell me to be brave. He just placed a copy of my timesheet beside the register, and there it was, every missing hour turned into ink. Proof. I had not imagined being tired. I had not imagined being used. Caleb leaned over the counter, his voice low. Think carefully, Lily. You need this job. The old fear rose from habit. Noah's sneakers. The rent ledger. The electric bill in the cereal box. My mother's voice, somewhere in memory, telling me to breathe first. I did. Then I looked at Caleb and said, no, I needed the money I earned. Vincent's eyes moved to me, and for the first time, I saw something like pride break through his restraint. Not ownership. Not victory. Recognition. The kind that says, there you are. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the windows streaked and the street shining under gray afternoon light. Inside, Caleb Rhodes stood surrounded by the kind of truth he could not underpay, overcharge, or hide in an office drawer. And I understood then that Vincent had not come to save me from my life. He had come to put enough light on it so I could see the door. By closing time, Maple and Third Market did not feel like the same store. The aisles were still narrow. The freezer still rattled. The coffee machine still burned the bottom of the pot into something bitter and black. But the air had changed. Truth does that. It does not move the furniture, but it makes every shadow admit where it has been standing. Caleb spent the rest of the afternoon in his office, with the door half closed, speaking into his phone in a voice too low to understand and too sharp to be calm. I worked the register with Mr. Ellis sitting on the bench near the front window, a cup of fresh soup warming his hands. Vincent had bought it for him without making a show of it, then placed the receipt in the trash like kindness did not require witnesses. He stayed near the magazine rack with his black coat buttoned, reading nothing, watching everything. Every customer who came in felt it. They lowered their voices. They paid quickly. They left with the careful expressions of people who had walked into the middle of a storm and chosen not to ask about the weather. At 11, I locked the front door and turned the sign to closed. The street outside was slick with leftover rain, reflecting red brake lights and the green glow of the pharmacy across the corner. Caleb stepped out of the office holding the folder Vincent had placed on the counter. His face looked tired now but not sorry. I knew the difference. Sorry looks outward. Tired only wants the consequence to end. Lily, he said, forcing my name into something almost gentle. You and I can fix this without outsiders. Vincent looked up from the magazine he had never opened. Too late. The bell over the back entrance rang once. 2 people entered. A woman in a navy coat carrying a leather briefcase and an older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. They did not look like criminals. They looked worse to Caleb. Organized. Calm. Prepared. Vincent introduced them as labor attorneys working with a neighborhood legal clinic. The woman nodded to me first, not to him, and that small respect steadied me more than I expected. Miss Harper, she said, we have preliminary wage records and statements from former employees. We can explain your options before anything is filed. Caleb laughed without humor. Filed? This is a misunderstanding. The older man opened his briefcase and placed copies of timesheets, text messages, lease notices, and payment records on the counter one by one. No shouting. No threats. Just paper landing softly under fluorescent lights. Somehow that was more powerful than any raised voice I had ever heard. My missing hours were there. Noah's apartment ledger was there. Mr. Ellis's old rental papers were there. Names of people I recognized were there too, former cashiers, stockroom workers, a woman who used to clean the laundromat before she vanished from the schedule. Caleb had not been unlucky. He had been systematic. The attorney explained that unpaid wages could be pursued, lease intimidation could be challenged, and the recovery company tied to Mr. Ellis could be reported for review. Each sentence opened a window in a room I thought had no air. Caleb looked at Vincent. What do you want? Vincent did not move. Nothing that belongs to her. Caleb's eyes flicked to me then, smaller and meaner because he was losing the only language he understood. Be careful, Lily. Men like him do not do favors. My heart reacted before my mind did. Fear rose. Then anger met it at the door. I thought of the brown paper bag I had given away. Mr. Ellis's shaking hands. Noah saving me half a sandwich because he knew I would lie about eating. My mother counting cash at the kitchen table, and still teaching us never to make hunger an excuse for cruelty. I looked at Vincent, waiting for him to defend himself, but he did not. He gave me the answer because the question had been aimed at me. Maybe he does not, I said. But you made me pay for my own kindness. The room went completely quiet. Caleb's mouth tightened. Vincent's gaze settled on me with that same strange stillness from the night before. Only now I understood it better. He was not watching me like prey. He was watching me like a person walking out of a fire. He had no right to pull her from unless she reached first. The attorney slid a document toward Caleb. You can begin by acknowledging the wage discrepancy and releasing Miss Harper from any lease retaliation. Caleb stared at the page. His hand hovered over the pen. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop, then pulled away. Inside, my future waited in the scratch of ink. When Caleb finally signed, I did not feel saved. I felt something better. I felt believed. After Caleb signed, the attorneys did not celebrate. They gathered the papers with the same calm precision they had brought into the store, as if justice was not a miracle, just work done correctly. Maybe that was what made my hands shake. Not relief. Not even fear. The realization that my suffering had been ordinary enough to have procedures, forms, claims, deadlines. People had built entire offices around fixing the kind of wrong I had been taught to swallow quietly. The woman in the navy coat explained what would happen next. Wage recovery, lease protection, review of roads recovery services, possible restitution for former employees and tenants. Mr. Ellis listened with both hands wrapped around his soup cup, His eyes wet but steady. Caleb sat behind the counter without looking at me, his pen still in his hand, like he could not understand how a girl he scheduled and underpaid had become a witness to his undoing. When the attorneys left, they gave me a folder with copies and a card for the legal clinic. Real help. Ordinary help. Help that came with office hours and paperwork instead of black SUVs. I should have felt safe with that. Instead, I turned on Vincent the moment we stepped outside. The rain had stopped completely, leaving Philadelphia shiny and cold around us. Neon signs reflected in puddles. A bus groaned down 3rd Street. The black SUV waited at the curb, quiet as a secret. "What do you want?" I asked. Vincent looked at me, not surprised. "From Caleb." "From me." My voice cracked on the second word and I hated it. People like you do not walk into corner stores, bring attorneys, expose fraud, and ask for nothing. There is always a price. He stood beneath the broken awning, rainwater dripping from the edge between us. His black coat made him look carved out of the night, but his eyes were not cold now. They were tired. "You think I bought you?" I think powerful men call things protection when they want ownership to sound generous. The words were dangerous. I knew that. Caleb would have punished me for half of them. Most men would have interrupted. Vincent only absorbed them. "Good," he said. I blinked. "Good. Yes. Keep saying no when something feels wrong. Especially to me." That stole the anger from my mouth for one full second. He reached into his coat slowly and removed a sealed envelope. He held it out but did not step closer. "Back wages calculated from the records we already have. The legal clinic will verify the final amount. This is an advance from a victim assistance fund they administer. Not from me." I did not take it. "And my rent?" "Protected for now. Caleb cannot retaliate without making his own case worse." "And Mr. Ellis?" "A social worker is meeting him tomorrow morning. He also has a claim." My throat tightened. "You did all that because I gave him soup?" Vincent's gaze moved past me to the dark store window, where my reflection stood small under cheap fluorescent light. "No," he looked back. "I started because you gave him soup. I stayed because Caleb had mistaken kindness for something he could charge by the hour." The envelope trembled in his hand, or maybe that was my vision. I thought of Noah asleep on the couch, his textbooks open, pretending he did not know I skipped meals. I thought of Mr. Ellis washing an empty soup cup because gratitude was the only currency he had left. I thought of all the times I had confused needing help with owing my soul. "I do not want to owe you," I whispered. Vincent's voice lowered. "Then do not. That is not how the world works. It is how this works." He placed the envelope on the metal newspaper box beside us, not in my hand, leaving the choice outside my body. "I am not buying your gratitude, Lily Harper. I am returning what was stolen." The streetlight flickered above him. For a moment, he looked less like a man from whispered headlines and more like someone standing at the edge of a door he did not expect to be invited through. "Why could you not forget?" I asked. His answer came after a long silence. "Because you had almost nothing, and the world had every excuse to make you cruel. But you still gave away warmth." I looked down at the envelope, then at his untouched face, then at the store where my fear had worked longer hours than I ever had. I picked up the envelope not because he offered it but because it was mine. And for the first time in years, taking back what belonged to me did not feel like debt. It felt like breathing. The next morning I walked Noah to school with $27 in my pocket, a legal clinic folder under my arm, and a strange new feeling I did not trust yet. It was not happiness. Happiness felt too bright for a Wednesday morning in Philadelphia, with wet sidewalks, late buses, and my brother pretending not to stare at the envelope I had placed on the kitchen table before breakfast. It was something quieter. Space. For the first time in months, my thoughts did not have to stand shoulder to shoulder with fear. Noah kept glancing at me as we walked past the laundromat, his backpack hanging from one shoulder, his old sneakers slapping against the pavement. "You are acting weird," he said. "Thank you." That was not a compliment. I am choosing to hear it as one. He smiled and the sight almost hurt. 16-year-old boys should not have to learn the shape of their sister's worry. They should complain about homework, argue about cereal, forget umbrellas, and believe the world is still large enough to be kind. At the corner near his school, I handed him money for lunch and watched his face change. Lily, no. Take it. Did you eat? I gave him the look our mother used to give us when questions got too close to truth. Noah. He took the money slowly like he wanted to make sure it was real. Then he hugged me in the middle of the sidewalk, quick and awkward and fierce. I knew you were lying, he whispered. My throat closed. About what? Everything being fine. Before I could answer, the school bell rang, and he ran inside with his hood bouncing against his back. I stood there longer than I needed to, letting the morning cold touch my face until I could breathe again. Across the street, Mr. Ellis sat on a bench beside a woman from the outreach program, holding a paper cup of coffee with both hands. He looked cleaner, warmer, still fragile but no longer invisible. When he saw me, he lifted one hand. Not a wave exactly. More like a thank you sent through the air. I lifted mine back. Maple and Third Market stayed closed that day. A printed notice appeared on the door by noon, explaining temporary review, staffing changes, and legal compliance. Caleb's name was not on it. Mine was not either. For once, my life was changing without being displayed for strangers to judge. The legal clinic called before lunch. They had found more missing wages, more employees, more records. The woman in the navy coat said the process would take time, but there would be process. That word time used to scare me. Time meant late fees, notices, hunger, and pretending. Now it meant something could unfold without me bleeding myself dry to keep it standing. Vincent came by near dusk, not to the apartment, not to my door, but to the sidewalk across from the clothes store. He stood beside the black SUV with his hands in his coat pockets, waiting until I chose to cross. That mattered. Power had followed me before. This was different. This was power standing still. Mr. Ellis is safe tonight, he said when I reached him. The clinic has him in temporary housing. I nodded. Noah ate school lunch today. Something softened in his eyes, so brief I might have missed it if I had not been learning his silences. Good. I looked at the dark market windows, the sign, the counter where my brown paper bag had disappeared into someone else's need. I thought giving things away made me easier to empty. Vincent followed my gaze. No, his voice was quiet. It showed the world where you were full. I hated that my eyes burned. I hated that he kept saying things my mother would have understood. You still scare me, I said. You should be careful with people who have power. That is not an answer. It is the honest one. I looked at him, then really looked past the coat, the car, the name people whispered. Why are you still here? He did not answer quickly. Rain began again, soft enough to silver his shoulders without soaking through. Because that night, I watched you give away your last meal like the world had not taught you to be selfish yet. I have seen men spend fortunes trying to be remembered. You spent $3.18 and I could not forget you. The street blurred. The traffic lights smeared red and green across the pavement, just like that first night. But I was not hungry now. I was not alone in the same way. I had my brother, my name, my wages coming back, and the beginning of a future that did not require me to become cruel to survive. Vincent did not touch me. He did not ask for a promise. He only stood beside me while rain gathered between us like something being washed clean. He ruled the city through fear, but the girl behind the counter taught him that mercy could be more unforgettable than power.